now let's deploy firewall. We have to deploy that firewall in management availability zone. Right, so now I have to launch instance. So, okay, so earlier, whenever we were launching, right, so we were picking that images from that Amazon Linux or from Windows Linux, right? So these are all operating system. You want to launch it from Mac OS, Ubuntu, Red Hat, SUSE. So from where you want to launch, right? Here, I want to launch it any third-party appliance. So for that, I will select more Amazon machine images. So in that Amazon machine images, which image I want to launch, right? So here I don't want any operating system. Here I want a third party. So I will select a marketplace AMI. So in that marketplace AMI, right? So whatever DLP, whatever web proxy, whatever load balancer, whatever you want, a CS, PM, any of the third-party security tool which is available in that AWS marketplace, right? So you can select it. It is just like a Google Play Store, right? It's you just select that which app or which product you want to install on your account, right? Select it here. So I will select it here, Palo Alto. Right. So now these are all list of Palo Alto services which are available in AWS Marketplace. So I can select it here, right? So in this, I will use my BYOL, bring your own license. The reason of selecting this is that because let's suppose if I will go with this Panorama, right? I don't need Panorama. This is a management tool. Similarly, if I will go with that threat prevention, 5-core security. So whenever I will launch that, right, I have to pay for that additional services, right? But if I will go with that, bring your own licenses, right? So that they will give me a very basic firewall without any features, any layer 7 features. So I have to use my own licenses to enable that features. But in my scenarios, I am not going to enable antivirus, anti-spyware, or any layer 7 inspection or any remote VPNs, right? So I will go with very basic, right? So it will charge less amount. So I selected my this firewall, right? So they are saying that hourly I have to pay this amount. So I selected this. Done.
So Manpreet, in the production environment, what image we generally take?
So again, it's all depends upon that what features you want, right? So whenever we purchase a Palo Alto, right? So we purchase based upon that what features we want. We never purchase any of the firewall with all the features, right? So if you have already DLP solutions, then why you will use that DLP license on the Palo Alto? Similarly for Web 1, right? What go first with that default features, right? Use that in your environment, then customize based upon your requirement, right? Never purchase all the features in one go.
Okay, so this is the default image, so that we can
Yes,
take it. Okay.
yeah, right.
Mhm, mhm.
So
Okay.
under this, I have
Could
to
you please,
create.
Manpreet, could you please show me once again which image we have selected and how many vCPUs and what are the requirements for instances? Could
One
you please
second.
show me once again?
1 second. Security key.
Because
So
nowadays Palo Alto released a new method of licensing, that is vCPU, core based licensing.
okay.
So we want to check
So
this.
yeah. So when I choose Palo Alto base image, that is with that bring your own license, right? So this was that image I have selected, right? And with this image, this is my 8 CPUs and 32 gig of memory I am using, right?
And can we check once again, because here I can't see uh, the
1 second.
could you please show me once again?
Right? So I selected marketplace. In marketplace, I selected a base model.
Wait a
This
moment.
this one, right? Bring your
One
own
second.
license.
Bring your own license. And can we check that configuration of means specification of this thing over here at the same place?
Yeah, you can select this on the Palo Alto side.
But here there are a number of VMC in your own license. No? VMC
Right.
and
So
800,
yeah,
500,
you can see
more
this,
than
right?
this.
So whatever the features they are providing to you.
This is the requirement of this.
Right. This is the usage. This is the overview.
So cores are not mentioned over here, but you are taking a 8 vCPUs in the instance. So I think
So when I'm selecting this, right? So that AWS recommends that, okay, for this one, right?
okay,
The minimum requirement for that Palo Alto is this.
okay. Thank you.
So this is not specifically for, right? So whatever, like if you will deploy that F5 or Cisco, right? So based upon that model, they will select that this is the minimum requirement. If you want to increase your processing power, you can go let's right. So the minimum requirement is this one, right? But I can go to higher one. If I have a 64 GB, I can select this, right? 64 GB, 16 vCPUs. It will give me a better performance. But again, as this is my lab environment, right? So I don't want to pay too much cost for my lab. So I will go with that minimum one. So I selected this. I created a one security key pair, right? So now I want to launch this firewall. I want to launch this firewall in my security VPC. So I selected my security VPC. From subnet perspective, I want to launch this in my management subnet, right? And public IP, I want it. It should be enabled so that I can access this Palo Alto firewall, and this public IP will be my management interface IP. Through that, I will access that, right? So from security group perspective, let's create FW security. Okay. So SSH I want, and I want this HTTPS access, right? So guys, as you said that as we already know that whenever we launch our EC2 instance, right? By default, they are giving a 20 GB of storage. So here I have to pay one for my instance one, because now I am not using a free tier instance, plus the storage the minimum requirement to launch this firewall is 60 GB. So make sure if you will do your lab after terminating your EC2 instance, remove your this EBS volume, because this is 60 GB. So you have to pay additionally for this storage as well. So I launched my firewall. So now I launched one firewall in my management interface, right? So now what I'm going to do, I will, here my firewall is ready, right? My firewall is ready, although I have to configure it, right? Now parallelly, I will create one instance here, EC2 instance here, and I will send its traffic to my firewall, right? For a testing perspective, that whenever I will send that, whether its traffic is going to firewall and it is processing through policies through net and go to that internet, right? So I will create one EC2 instance in my private availability zone with no public IP, right? So it will only have a private IP. So one public EC2 instance, I will connect it, launch in public instance. The reason for that is that I will access that as my jump server. This will be my jump server. Through that, I will connect to this EC2 instance, and this EC2 instance do not have any route to my internet gateway. So this will use my private subnet, right? So this will use my private subnet, but now I have a firewall. So that firewall trusted interface or a private ENI, right? I will create one route for my private subnet, that 0.0.0.0/0 should go to private ENI, and that private ENI is my Palo Alto trust interface, right? And it will hit to that trust interface. From that trust interface, we will do all the routing, and here I will create one untrust interface. So is it? Yeah, it is currently initiating. So let's launch one instance. Public EC2. I will use my security key for this one. I want to launch this in my security VPC. In security VPC, I want to launch it in my public subnet. In public subnet, yes, I want its IP. From security group perspective, let's go with this firewall, because they have allowed this 22, and I launched it. Go to that instance, launch one instance. Private EC2. I want this private EC2 to be accessible through my security key, and I want to launch it in my security VPC. In security VPC, I want it to be launched in my private subnet. And in private subnet, I don't want to give any public IP. So let's go with that default security group. Done. my prod firewall is installing. Let's see. On public one, I have a public IP. Okay. And for private EC2, I don't have a public IP, so it will be only accessible over the internet. So now, meanwhile, our firewall is installing, right? So what we can do, we can create a ENIs, right? Because now this firewall, when I am deploying that firewall, right, there is a only one interface on this EC2 instance. So that interface, I will use as a management interface, right? Through that, I will access my firewall over this public IP, right? But now on that firewall, I want one public ENI and one private ENI. So now let's go to network interfaces. Okay. So this is my firewall. 1 second. Let's see.
Last one, I think.
I have 1 second. .30 is my firewall IP. Yeah, last one. You're right. Firewall ENI. Firewall. Done, right? So now I will create one more interface. Firewall public ENI. And that will connect to my firewall public interface. So where is my public? This is in my public subnet. Done. Security group, I will use this. This is my public ENI. Public ENI. So now I want one ENI for my private interface. I want to launch this in my private subnet. Security group, I am using this. Okay, right. So this one, when I launched my firewall, right? So this one was automatically created, right? This one is used to access my firewall. However, I have now, this is, if you see, this is showing that this is already in use. So I created two more ENIs. One is for my trust interface and one is for my untrust interface, right? So I want to also give one public IP to my public ENI, right? So for that, now what I will do, I will go to that elastic IP. I want one public IP. So I allocate one public IP for my this account. So let's give the name this ENI. This is my firewall public ENI IP, right? And I want this to be associated with my network interface. So I want to assign this to my public ENI. So I assign this to my public ENI. Done. So till this, we are clear that what we are doing, right? So now what we did, we launched one firewall here. We created one EC2 instance here, right? So when we create one EC2 instance, by default, one ENI is created to access that interface that was in public, right? Similarly, when we deployed one firewall here, right? That ENI was created for this availability zone so that it should be accessible, right? So this will be accessible and that ENI is considered as a management ENI. Through that, we will access to our firewall from that internet, right? Then we created one ENI that will be used for my public subnet, right? This is my public ENI. And here I pick one public IP from my AWS and attach that public IP to this ENI so that it can send and it can NAT my traffic through this ENI. And similarly, I also created one ENI for my private subnet so that my private subnets can access to my private ENI, right? So two things now we have to do. In my private routing table, I have to route now the traffic to my this private ENI. First thing I have to do. And second thing, earlier what we were doing. So when this firewall, this EC2 instance was sending that traffic through this ENI. So this ENI was managing all my source and destination NAT checks. Similarly, this when I'm using this ENI, right? So this ENI was managing my source and destination check. But now I have to tell to that ENIs that I have my security device which will manage my source and destination check. So you do not need to take care of my source and destination checks of my packet. So I have to disable the source and destination checks on that ENI level, because now that NAT part will be managed through my third party device, right? So these two steps we will do. So how we will do? Go to that network interface, select public ENI, go to actions, change source and destination check, right? So I have disabled that source and destination check because now this interface is connected with that firewall and my firewall will take care of my source and destination check. So this network interface should not to be worried about that. Similarly, for my private ENI, select that, go and disable the source and destination check. This one is done. Similarly, for that routing part, go to that routing table. Where is my private route? This is my private routing table. Go to that routes. For my public routing table, I have a route that for internet access. One second. Oh, sorry, this one is default one. So this is my public one, right? So for that public one, I have a route that for all the internet traffic, go to that IGW. But now for that private routing table, I will say that, okay, so whenever you have to go to that internet, you have to go to the network interface. And in that network interface, you have to go to my private ENI, right? So now my private subnet will send all the traffic to my Palo Alto private ENI. Currently, it is not a Palo Alto ENI because I have not attached with that Palo Alto. But yes, now on AWS level, I have created a route that for all my private subnet, when they have to access to internet, they have to send that request to this private ENI. It is showing a black hole because currently this private ENI is not attached with any device, right? Any network device. So currently they don't have a next hop address. So that is why it is showing status black hole. So as soon as my firewall will be up and this ENI will be attached, I have to verify that whether this status is showing active, right? Okay, so let's see if my firewall is now accessible. Done. It's still taking time, right? So go to that actions, monitor, get instance screenshot. It is showing a, okay. One second, where I have deployed that. I selected my security key. I will save my public key. Security private key. I extracted from that PAM file my public key and a private key. On desktop. This is my private key and what is the public IP of my firewall?
Now it is accessible in behind of the screen.
Yeah, let's see if it is accessible through CLI. Yes, so the default username of Palo Alto is admin. My key is working or not? Yes. Right. Right. So let's change the password, right? I have to configure, and after configuring, I am changing the password of my username admin. I'm putting password